welcome to the first Friends of the Altadena Library digital event. And this is really something for us. It's like a really good Zoom meeting for once. Um, so today we're going to do our book pitch party. Of course, you're all aware of that. But we also want to honor and recognize Polly as a friend of the Altadena Library. So I've known Polly. Polly started in 1985 at the Altadena Library. She was the children's librarian, she was the reference librarian, and she retired as the acting director after Barbara Pearson passed away, after 30 years. And in all her years of service, I'm looking right at you, Polly, so in case my eye looks a little weird. Okay. In all her years of service, I was always so amazed at Polly's ability to speak in public. I get tongue-tied, I get stage fright, my mind goes blank. But Polly was one of the best people for introducing guests. She's a natural performer. She has a history of this. She's not only just a librarian, or not just a librarian, but Polly is a performer. She's a dancer. If you don't know that, Polly is a very good dancer. She and Richard, I would see at the Y doing their dancing. But Polly also was one of the starters of the Poetry and Cookies events for the Friends, one of the main supporters of that. She's been a supporter of the Friends for all of the years, over the 30 years she worked at the library. We admire, we thank you, we miss you, not seeing you every day. We are ever so grateful for having known you and for the support you've given the Friends. And for that, we would like to honor you and to offer you a membership, a lifetime membership of the Friends and the Friends of the Altadena Library. To thank you for all of your support over the years. All of the things that you've done. You may not remember this, but one year Kevin Starr was supposed to be our guest speaker at the annual meeting. And at the last minute, Kevin Starr was the state librarian of California. Something came up more important than us, and he wasn't able to come to the library. Polly brought her speaking group, her poetry group, her life story speaking group to the library, and they performed with like 2 days notice. I mean, literally, we had like 2 days notice that he wasn't going to be there. And Polly and her event, Polly saved our annual meeting event that year. Just one of the many times that Polly saved the Friends. But I always remember that. And I thank you for that. I thank you for your support over the years. And we were ever so happy to have you and Richard as lifetime annual members. Thanks, Polly.
Oh, well, thank you, Marnie. I really feel as if I should be giving you an award. The Friends have been so wonderful to the library, supporting so many programs, their budget, poetry and cookies, and you're just the best people in the world, the best friends in the world, and you make it the best library in the world. And I used to say I wanted to live there. It's just such a great place to be. And seeing you all, it reminds me how much I love you all. And thank you. This is so sweet of you. I don't need this, but it was really nice.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you.
And we don't have a framed award or anything, but we do have a, let me just share this. We do have this letter that you should be receiving at some point very soon. So we do thank you so much. And you'll get that in the post when Marnie signs and mails it up. And Paulie is actually going to, I have Paulie and it down to pitch first and second. But before that, we have a little fun thing that we're going to do, which is a quiz. So I will just share the quiz here. I don't know why I didn't just do that. And so we're going to basically put up these quiz questions. I will also post a link in chat, which I think people should be able to see, which will show you guys where I have uploaded all the quiz questions. and then we will, whoops, what did I just do? Oh, there we go. Wow, I've really lost my mind here. Sorry. And then as we're doing the rest of the meeting, if people want to have another look at the quiz questions, they can have a look there, and they can and then at the end of the quiz we will show the answers. So I am going to read the questions, show the pictures. You can write it down, or else you can go to the website and have a look as people are pitching, but obviously you should be watching people pitching. So all right, so the first one is, which female author spent the last 8 years of her life living here? There we go. Question 2 is, which, oh, and I can't see it when I'm in that mode. Which male author had this home built for him and his family? So which male author had this home built for him and his family? Question 3 is, which female author of supernatural tales lived here from 1989 to 2004? Which female author of supernatural tales lived here from 1989 to 2004? Question 4, which mystery writer owned this home from 1938 to 1976? So which mystery writer owned this home from 1938 to 1976? There's only 10 questions, don't worry everyone. Question 5, which author designed this house and lived here for 43 years? Just realized the questions are written on the screen, so I really don't need to repeat that twice. So which author designed this house and lived here for 43 years? Question 6, which literary fairy tale inspired this statue? Which sadly was in the news recently again. Which literary fairy tale inspired this statue? Question number 7, who is this character? I know, it's so difficult, this one, isn't it? Who is this character? Question number 8, which novel inspired this 1955 Picasso sketch? Which novel inspired this 1955 Picasso sketch? Penultimate question, question 9, which French children's story inspired this statue? Which French children's story inspired this statue? And finally, question 10, which 1865 novel inspired this statue? Which 1865 novel inspired this statue? Okay, and so I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to put a link to, it's a Google Slides thing, so hopefully it will work for everyone. To tell me if you can see this. Hopefully everyone should be able to see this. If anyone wants to have a look, does everyone see a link just appear in the chat? Okay, good. So if you want to have another look at one of the questions, you could go there and have a quick look before the end. And there's no prize. It's just the prize of it's just the fun of doing it. So we'll show the answers at the very end. Okay. So now I'm checking my, and we'll also post the answers on our website, Twitter, and Facebook, along with the recording of this event. Okay, so now on to the book pitches. Before we do the first pitch, everyone who pitches can choose a $10 gift voucher from one of these local businesses, and I'm supposed to be sharing a slide showing the local businesses as I say that. So let me just share this. So these are the local businesses, and They are Roman's Bookstore, Grocery Outlet, Bargain Market, Pizza of Venice, and the Friends of the Altadena Library. Good for future purchases. So at such a point as we hope we could reopen the bookstore and have book sales again. And also good to purchase, of course, t-shirts or tote bags or whatever. And all of these can be purchased and delivered to you online, and they will deliver to you as well. So actually, I'm not sure about Grocery Outlet. I don't know that they will deliver. But anyway, most of this can be done online electronically. So there's no risk of, don't have to go out for any of these things. Other than the Friends, of course, which hopefully at some point we'll be able to do that again. So you don't have to say what you want right now unless you would like to, but you can just email after your pitch to the Friends email address and let us know what you would like, and we will make sure it gets to you. All right, so with no further ado, Paulie, you are up. And you are still muted, so unmute.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. And I don't feel complete unless I sing something. It just came to me. I just have to sing something. So I'll just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. 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 Okay, that's okay. I had to do a little something there. Okay, well, I'm here to tell you about the book, My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You She's Sorry. And it's by Frederick Backman. It was written in Sweden, but it was published in 25 countries, and it's been loved. It's a wonderful book that just makes you feel good. It makes you cry, but it also makes you laugh a lot. And it feels like a fairy tale. Parts of it feel like you're living inside a fairy tale. 77-year-old Granny is cantankerous and crazy, and she regularly shoots people with her paintball gun. And most people think of Elsa as feisty and way too precocious, especially when she corrects their grammar. 7-year-old. Her teachers tell her she should just get along when all the kids bully her, beat her up at school. Her only friend is her grandma. And the book opens with them in jail because they broke into the zoo at 1 a.m. the night before to see if monkeys sleep standing up. When policemen show up, Grandma tosses turds at the policeman, then bats her eyes when she's in jail, hoping they will let her smoke. When this doesn't work, she tells them, this is apartheid. And apartheid. But Elsa asks her for her phone. And she looks up that word and she says, Grandma, you're wrong. This has nothing to do with apartheid. Then she switches to her secret language to tell Grandma it's illegal to flirt with policemen. And she knows why she broke out of the hospital to take her to the zoo. It was because Elsa had talked to her that day and told her that the kids had not only beaten her up, they'd torn her beloved Grindor scarf from Harry Potter. So back at the hospital, Elsa overhears her grandma talking to her lawyer, saying that, I know I haven't told Elsa yet that I'm dying, but I just can't. Every 7-year-old needs a superhero, and superheroes don't die of cancer. Granny then gives her letters to give to several people, and she tells her to tell them, my grandmother told me to say she's sorry. When Granny dies, Elsa feels as if she's lost the only person in the world who loves her. Her mother's always gone. She's a physician. Her father has a new wife and a family. And here's Elsa. And that's when you just start crying. It's really a hard moment. But then as she starts delivering these letters, it turns into kind of a treasure hunt. And taxis show up to take her wherever she needs. And when she asks them how they knew Grandma, she finds out that this assortment of misfits and monsters were all starring in the fairy tales that Grandma used to tell her before she went to bed to help her go to sleep, because she'd read somewhere that children often die in their sleep. So Grandma was there with these stories. She also found out that these people all live in her building, and that Grandma saved all of their lives when she was a surgeon or also a volunteer at disasters all over the world. And she gave each of these people a place to live afterwards in her apartment house where they could heal. And the miraculous thing is that as they tell Elsa their stories, they do begin to heal. They come out when they've been secluded for years. They come out of themselves. They change their lives. And when Elsa's life is threatened by this evil man who is the snake in the fairy tales, but he's a real live person, tries to kill her. So they're all there trying to protect her, and the policeman is there. She's there trying to protect her. And Elsa becomes closer to her family, her mother, her father. And then she meets a new girl at school who's also different. And the two of them seem so cool to the other kids that they all want to join them. They follow them around, and they no longer beat her up. And I just felt this book was so utterly satisfying. The ending was, I just sighed with, it's like you had this huge turkey dinner with pumpkin pie. It's just like, it was perfect. I'd never felt so good at the ending of a book as this. And I hope that you all get a chance to read it too, that you all get a chance to read it too. And bring some Kleenex.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well done. Thank you, Paulie. That was wonderful. Oh, does anyone have a question about the book? That's what we did last time. We asked people if anybody had questions they wanted to ask. I guess, is it recent?
It was
Sorry,
translated in English in 2015.
Okay. Jeanette, did you have a question?
Yes. How did you find the book, Polly? How did you come across it?
Well, a friend recommended it, and I heard it was on a bestseller list, and I'd heard about it several times, and then I just decided I needed something fun to read, so I read it, and the library does have a copy. I misplaced it, okay, but it's got a cute picture of this little girl by the seaside with this huge dog. And incidentally, my friend couldn't finish the book. She couldn't do it. She got sad. But there are a lot of books that become sad for a few minutes, and then they change. Everything changes. That's often what I've found. And you just get to love the book even more because you've gone through so much with these characters.
Yeah, I've got the picture here.
There it is.
Lovely. So thank you very, very much for that, Paulie. All right, so I think we're now moving on to Dick.
Dick?
Okay. Two poems. Both have titles which The first words of them are sound off. The first one, sound off on sound bites. Action, targets. Rear shock poetry. Oscillate God-given cavities. Vibrate survival DNA. Tune enzymes. Digitize organs. Catch heart. Entertain ear, nose, throat. Draw eyes. Connect symphony of scenery. Sing between the lines. Paint with pen on their stanza. Compose effective brain bait. Set memory flash eruptions. Staff attention span. Play swarm theory. Practice with bloggers. Ad campaign. Fund critics. Serenade music to the eyes. Hypnotize audiences. Cheerlead couch potatoes. Broadcast Pravda. Conquer media. Rule world. Go sound off. Okay. The next one is sound off / face off. People don't have names now. Their name was the key to opening them up. They have faces. Over time, they disguise themselves. Faces can tell a lot, but a friend wants to be able to include sound to spill emotions. Telephone works better than silent video. Software recognizes face and voice. It translates speech to text or to commands. Computers in pencils correlate students' notes with audio of the professor's voice. Talk to programs faceless so far. Or to humans of Facebook video. See Earth from orbit, your abode from different views. The computer is a brain extension for memory storage communication. We are part of a world brain, accessible by voice for less reading. Has Big Brother spread or caught knowledge viruses from the web? Broadcast with evil or good intent? Too many media police watching you? Are they changing AD to AI? Expert systems guide the mediocrity. The battleground is communication. Design babies can be DNA'd to accept the message. Will octuplet youngsters tweet on Twitter? Get together or order frozen embryos? Part of that is slightly late for my generation. Unless I had something like a feel-o-vision suit. Where are my hearing aids? Can you hear me now? What's your name? Oh, well, bye-bye.
Thank you. That was great. Oh, wow. So are they published anywhere?
Yes. yes, in some Altadena poetry reviews and
Not the
the poetry
last-
and cookies.
Was it in the, were either of those in the last one?
The last one, Dick did his one, My Car is Like a Woman.
Right. I remember, I heard that one
Yeah.
at the Poetry Cookies virtual event. That was
Right.
great.
So this one was before that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I like that. Any other questions for Dick or Paulie? Okay. Oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes. So was that a commentary on Zoom?
Oh. I think he wrote it before Zoom, but it's pretty appropriate that this is very appropriate for Zoom communication.
Oh.
Or even the disembodied voices that you hear when you go to the airport and the train stations. And this kind of feels like that sci-fi movie with those voices.
Yes, more and more.
We are living in that world, aren't we? Oh, thank you very much, both of you, for giving us a great start to today's pitch party. So now I think if Anne, are you on the line? Uh-oh. Anne, are you with us? Anne said that she was having some issues with her connection.
There we are, but I am here. I'm
great.
sorry, and I'm also visible. It's just, you know, like I said, I have a very old computer, and it's starting to get cranky.
No worries. I have just tried to post all of your links, but for some reason
Oh,
they're
dear.
not showing up. So I will do them individually as you speak. So please go
Okay,
ahead.
take your time. It's no big deal. I just put the links to the card catalog to a couple of my other books. Last year, I was privileged enough and honored enough to pitch my first two books in the old Los Angeles series, Death of the Zanjera and Death of the City Marshal. And a lot of people were asking me then, when is the third one coming out? Well, it's here. This is Death of the Chinese Field Hands. A night of chaos leads to more murders. Physician and winemaker Maddie Wilcox has always despaired of how violent Los Angeles is. But one night in October 1871, the Pueblo explodes in a riot and 18 Chinese men are lynched. Shaken to her core and frustrated that she couldn't have done more to stop the violence, Maddie throws herself into her work, grateful that her 3 Chinese field hands were safe on her rancho that most terrible of nights, until one of them is found strangled in her vineyard with his own cue. At first, the murder seems like a random act against the scapegoated Chinese. Then a second of the 3 Chinese hands is murdered in the same way. Is the killer acting out against the Chinese in general, or only those working on Maddie's rancho? And if the latter, what does the killer hope to get? A distinctive boot print and a bit of jewelry are all Maddie and her friends have to go on as Maddie continues to battle the usual panoply of injuries and rampant diseases that plague the Pueblo. Surrounded by prejudice, daunted by her own limitations, Maddie's hold on her passions starts slipping. Can she keep her temper in check long enough to find the killer? That is Death of the Chinese Field Hands. It is based on the actual event of the riot on October 24th, 1871, in which the 18 men were killed. However, I kind of go on flights of fancy from there because it is fiction. And I had a lot of fun with it. So there you have it.
How do you get your inspiration? Do you do a lot of historical research?
Oh, yeah. And truth be told, this kind of came as I was doing, actually, this idea dated all the way back to Zanjera when I was first doing the research for Death of the Zanjera. And I heard about this and I thought, well, shoot, maybe I should do something with that. And in fact, I kind of debated not, but, and it's kind of fun because the opening is Maddie saying, when I began the Herculean labors that writing my memoirs has turned out to be, I was fully intended to skip this episode. So, but I thought, yeah, I really should do it. She would have been around. She would have been horrified. It was a tough book to write because it doesn't deal with a lot of a lot of the prejudice that was rampant at the time, and which I think will be it's kind of interesting that it's coming out now.
Yeah.
So,
I
any
think
other
it's
questions?
fascinating. Yeah. Any other questions for Anne?
It's interesting that I recently saw a review on another book dealing with the same subject. Do you think there was some inspiration for the both of you to come out with this type of writing at the same time? What triggered you to write on this topic?
Well, again, it's part of it was because it was an event that was going on. I actually did the writing. Yeah, I actually finished the first draft a little over a year ago. So, you know, some of this was already happening, but not all of it. And but I had I also got a hold of partly because I was doing it involved the research I was doing for Death of the City Marshal. There was an author, Scott Zesch, who wrote the Chinatown Wars, which is the history of the event. But it also goes into some of the things that were going on before that, including the death of and shooting of William Warren, which is, you know, Death of the City Marshal. And so it was just, okay, this is part of the history. This is what I deal with in this particular series. I have to include it. So that's pretty much what inspired the story. But how it played out, I just kind of went, okay, well, I've got one night. I can't do a whole novel on one night. And I don't want to do one more body than there should have been, although I could have, partly because that's already been done before. So it just kind of grew from there.
And how long ago did you start the book?
I started it in winter 2019, I think.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it had been in planning before that. You have to understand my process. You know, I spend a lot of time thinking about these things before I actually put words on a screen. So I've probably been working on it since I started Death of the Zanhera, which was 2016.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for pitching it again. It's so awesome.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to do.
Always impressed by how prolific you are as well. So, and it's always good stuff. So, all right.
As long as you like it, and I hope you guys did get the catalog links to the libraries. So
I think they should be showing up so we can check it out of the Altadena Library catalog. So I think now we are moving on to Jeff. So Jeff, are you ready?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I will go ahead and read first, and then do a little spontaneity at the end. So the book I'll be pitching today is The Buffalo Soldier by Chris Bajalian. Most days, the Yale River in Vermont lazily meanders, starting in the Green Mountains and eventually ending at Lake Champlain, and in between running through the rural town of Cornish. But it was a much different river on that one Sunday afternoon in November, when a flash flood from the river swept 9-year-old twins Megan and Hillary Sheldon into the water, shattering the lives of their parents, Terry and Laura. A year later, Terry and Laura still grieve, but each of them don't know how they want to move on. Laura longs for another child, but biologically can't have one. She wants them to become foster parents, but Terry is unsure if he can emotionally invest in a child that isn't his own. They do, though, with the hope and anticipation that they'll receive a young girl as their foster child, but instead are offered Alfred, a 10-year-old boy who's bounced from foster home to foster home, and in a rarity for Vermont, is also Black. Alfred's no stranger to feeling out of place. The people in Vermont mean well, and they treat him well, but he knows he just doesn't fit in. He doesn't know how to fit in, he doesn't know where to fit in. Most of the time, he prefers to escape into a world of being alone, listening to his music, leaving the house for hours on end, not going anywhere in particular, but hoping to bum a cigarette off somebody, or even hitchhiking miles and miles away to see old friends he had made at previous houses, not saying much to the drivers who pick him up along the way. Most foster parents haven't been able to figure him out or get through to him, and all of them so far have just given up. Terry and Laura take him in, and it looks like the same old cycle. Him and Terry don't connect. Laura tries her best with him, but Alfred can't seem to open up to her. The neighbors across the street, though, Paul and Emily, former history professors who also own and ride horses, teach Alfred about the Buffalo Soldiers, Black United States Army soldiers who served on the Western frontier after the Civil War. As Alfred slowly starts to connect with Paul and grows more passionate about the soldiers and their history, Paul buys a new horse with a checkered past named Mesa and promises Alfred he'll teach him how to ride. Alfred's not a natural, but him and Mesa learn to trust each other, and Alfred believes on the same level that Mesa likes him so much, and he likes Mesa because they're the same. They're both different than everybody else around them. They've both lived in a lot of places, and they've both been shuffled around. I'm a big Chris Bajalian fan. I've been in his books for years. Fortunately, he comes out to Romans probably every other time he releases a book. It's great. Even he would admit that his first few books, he's not that unhappy that they're out of print. But he did have a big book in the late 90s called Midwives, which was a pick by Oprah for her book club. And a few years later, he released The Buffalo Soldier. And I really think that around that time period is when his golden period started in terms of writing. And I really love everything that he's done. So I could not recommend more. And it is in the Altadena Library, The Buffalo Soldier by Chris Bajalian.
That sounds great. When did you read it, Jeff?
It was years ago. I had gone on a trip to Vermont and loved it, just loved it. And so when I came back, this was early 2000s. And when I came back, I just wanted to see if I could find writers and novels that were about it, because it's what I was really interested in doing at the time. So I found him, and I think the first novel I did read of his was Midwives, and just I think this was probably the third novel of his that I read. So I've been a fan for quite a while.
That sounded really good. That was excellent. Any other questions for Jeff?
So this was a historical book with a narrative telling? Or...
No, it's set in present day. It's set in present day, but
they go back to history to talk about what happened in the past.
Right. I mean, probably from about the halfway point, or maybe 40% on, is when Alfred meets Paul and Emily. And so then it does talk a lot about the history, and you learn a lot about the history in the book, along with the telling of the story from that point on. But it is set in present day, or at least I think it came out in 2002, so at least early 2000s, small town Vermont.
So you got a lot of good historical information then.
Yeah, there's quite a bit in there.
Because I still think of the 90s as being present day, so it is, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Jeff. That is awesome. And if I have a chance, I might try and share the link to the. Well, I'm sure people can Google it can look it up in the library catalog, but that sounds pretty good. Okay, so moving on, we now have a double bill from Marlene Forsberg, who I hope is on the line. Marlene, are you out there?
Here I am. I started out thinking I would only plug one book, which is, don't know if you can see this or not. It's by Max Frankel, The Times of My Life and My Life with the Times. He is still alive. He's 90 years old. He escaped from Hitler's Germany and then finished growing up in New York City. And it's fascinating for me because it's fleshing out the things I had heard of during I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And so this is giving me a different view of things that I thought I remembered. Mr. Frankel spent 45 years at the New York Times as a reporter during the Cold War, and he was in Cuba, he was in the Soviet Union, and then came back and finally was in New York as an editor, from which he retired in 1999 and completed this book at that time. It just gives me, and it has so many different aspects to it, because he talks about his parents who they lived in Germany, but they were technically Polish Jews, but during the 1930s, they became stateless because Poland didn't want them and Germany didn't want them. His mother finally got herself and him out of the country in 1940, but his father spent the next 6 years in various Soviet, he had fled east when he couldn't get out of the country with his family, and he spent a lot of time in Siberia and other places in Russia. So and then you get a picture of New York in the 1940s, and it's hard to describe, because it appealed to me because of when I grew up, and this is an era that I grew up in. Mr. Frankel wound up going to Columbia at a time when Dwight Eisenhower was president of the university, when they were grooming him to become the Republican presidential candidate. And he spent his time on sort of radical newspapers, went at the college, and then went to the New York Times after graduation. So and then it describes the difficulties faced by his first wife, who suffered from depression at a time when no one quite knew what to do with this, and she finally wound up dying of breast cancer. It's just kind of a picture of an era, and there are things that I remember that he talks about, and I just have found it fascinating. The other book that I'm going to pitch today is something that got me thinking after I was with the Corona lockdown. I've been looking at a lot of travel pictures that I took over the years, and I realized that a lot of the paintings had things in them that I didn't understand what the significance was. And this little handbook called A Handbook of Symbols in Christian Art has been extremely helpful, because it defines the various things that you see in centuries of painting and what they meant. So those are my two books.
Thanks, Marlene. That was great. I think that first one that you talked about, I recently found a book that was written by a British guy who moved from the Cotswolds out to Los Angeles, and it was just something about someone being so similar to the path I'd taken that I just loved it. So I totally understand that, wanting to read about that era. There kind of, it's interesting, but it also reminds you of something. So that sounds really great.
Having grown up in that era and remembering parts of it, and then just to see it through the eyes of someone who was a reporter at the time, and he's still alive at the age of 90. And so he would have been 16 years older than I was, so he he would have seen things through a different perspective than I did. Particularly, I grew up in the Midwest, and he basically grew up in Europe and New York. So it's very interesting. Also, the picture of the role of really intelligent women at the time in this era is also fascinating.
That's great. Any other questions for Marlene?
Well, regarding the second book, did you take that book with you on your travels?
Unfortunately, I didn't find it till afterwards.
Oh.
But it would be, if I ever travel again, if any of us ever travels again, I'm going to take it with me because it's beautifully organized. The book is not new. It dates back, the author is Gertrude Grace Sill, and it dates back, it was copywritten in 1975. So it dates back a long time, but it's well organized, has pictures of symbols that you will see in the paintings. And I think if I ever get to go back to a European museum, then I'm going to have this book with me.
And what was the name of the book again?
A Handbook of Symbols in Christian Art.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So,
You're welcome.
Marlene,
Yes.
what is an example of a symbol?
Well, flowers and fruits, a goldfinch, a grasshopper, eagle, dragon, dove.
What does the goldfinch mean? Or
What does the what?
what does the goldfinch what does the goldfinch represent?
Okay, the goldfinch nests in thorny plants and thrives on prickly vegetation. Thorns being an allusion to the crown of thorns and hence the crucifixion, the goldfinch has evolved as a symbol of the passion. In the hand of the infant Christ, the goldfinch is prophetic of the passion. So these things are alphabetically organized, and it's very easy to just go to individual symbols, and also just interesting to read a letter, an alphabetic letter at a time.
That sounds fantastic. Thanks, Marlene.
You're welcome.
All right, so our next picture is Bridget Brewster. I know Bridget was out there earlier.
She's here, but she's
there
muted.
she is. There
You're
she is.
muted.
I think I'm unmuted. Okay, Bridget, don't touch anything. I'm going to unmute you. Oh, it's not working. You try unmuting yourself again.
There?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I was just saying 100% of the time that I'm in a Zoom meeting, not 98%, 100% of the time, I either forget to mute or I forget to turn on the video. So this book interested me because I love books about strong women that have strong characters in it, who struggle but find their way through it. So I'm just going to read a few excerpts. The first paragraph I want to read is in the prologue, and it's called The Moon Lady. I know the moon, and the moon knows me. I am the moon, and the moon is me. I am life itself. I'm not who they think I am, that old white man with the long white hair whose judging eyes try to force fear into their very pores. I am the moon mother, and I hold my children on my lap, night and day, in the heat and in the shade. When they wake and when they sleep, I whisper to them, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. The ones who feel my lunar light pause before they walk out the door for the day. They take a deep breath, greet the morning with love, and invite grace to enter them at every moment of the day. All have pain, but not all suffer. The body might ache, loss might occur, but for those who embrace my light, there is dancing. The next I'll read a little bit, just sort of introducing Calla Lily. On the days that Madeir washed her hair Wait, I forgot the first one. Sorry.
Oh,
My
and
name-
Bridget, this is from The Crowning Glory of Calla Lily Ponder, right?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Calla Lily Ponder. I was born in 1953 in La Luna, Louisiana, on the banks of the La Luna River. That is where my mother cut and curled hair, and my father and mother together taught tango, waltz, and the Cajun two-step. They said they named me for their favorite flower because they wanted me to spiral open into radiant beauty inside and out. Even when I was born, a red, tiny, hollering thing, they claimed they could see the beautiful, creamy-colored, velvety bloom of a calla lily. My eyes are blue like my mother's, and I call my mother Madeir. And my complexion is olive, like Papa's. I guess the only thing that resembles the flower I'm named for is my long, strong legs. They've served me well so far, and I'm grateful for that. I was taught not to care much what other people thought, unless someone said you were mean to them and it was true. Then you better pay attention. My big brothers and I learned that at an early age. That is, it is the kindness that makes you rich. And then on in the story, on the days that Madeir washed her hair, she called those days days of beauty. And she spent the whole day pampering herself, and she taught me how to pamper myself as well. If cleanliness is next to godliness, Madeir would say, then pampering is next to goddessness. My mother would say those kind of things and then give a little laugh and wink like we had our own secret club. Further on, one time for world history class, we had to write a paper on trends that shaped civilization. I thought and thought about ideas, like democracy or world wars. They all seemed too dull to me. Then it struck me how big a role hair has played in my life. Well, how big a role hair has played in human life. I went back as far as I knew for my research, to the Bible, to Greek mythology and stuff. I was thrilled by what I learned about hair. So I started my paper with the Bible, where God threatens to punish snooty women by making them bald. And then I wrote about the ancient Greeks who thought up the chignon. And then I thought, oh, that's a good style today. And I wrote about Lady Godiva, of course. She rode naked in the streets, only clothed by her hair, to make her mean husband let up on his subjects. And I wrote about St. Barbara, whose father dragged her by her hair because she was a Christian. And I described the hairdos of the 18th century, which were padded with horse hair till they were a mile high and then decorated with tall sailing ships and birds' nests. I can't imagine how those women slept in them. Then I covered the bobs of the so-called flappers, the wild women of the 20s, Marcel waves, which introduced curling irons, ratting, which led to beehives, the trend toward long hair for both men and women today. What I discovered about hair was amazing. Well, I thought so. Mr. Mason, my teacher, did not agree. Calla, he said, this paper has nothing to do with the growth of civilization or the wars that made it possible or the march of progress to go on and on. You wrote a paper about hair. Yes, sir, I did. Well, we're not a beauty school. And then he laughed. We're studying the history of the world. Yes, sir, and your hair is part of that history. Calla, hair is just fashion, and fashions come and go. Well, isn't fashion part of civilization? well, it is, but it hasn't changed history, like the rise of Christianity or the Industrial Revolution or the World Wars. He gave me a C. Well, that upset me, and I asked Papa about it. He was in the South Pacific at the end of World War II. Why is war more important than regular people's lives and the way they want to look or feel? Why is war more important than things people care about in peacetime? And he looked at me and said, Calla, for some reason, there are a lot of people who find war more exciting than just about anything you can name. And of course, the story goes on, and it's so beautifully written as she grows into womanhood and finds her way back. She leaves La Luna, of course, and then eventually comes back and finds that's where she belongs, is with the moon goddess. It's a wonderful book, written in 2009.
Thank you, Bridget. That was
Sure,
great.
you're very welcome.
I love that stuff about hair.
I did too.
And aren't we all
You wouldn't
thinking
know
about
I'm
hair now?
fascinated by hair, but
Hair, I think is. Oh, sorry. Someone had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering if she ever comes back in the book to connect hair with how it affects the world.
well, she does, and she also, when she comes back, her mother and father taught their dance classes in their home, and then she did hair out on her front porch. And eventually, Calla Lily returns to realize how important it is to touch and feel one another and to make others feel beautiful just by washing and massaging their head. So it's really wonderful.
And you're right, it is very apt. Paulie?
I wanted to ask if you usually look for books that make you feel happy. I see your face has a kind of a glow, and when you talk about that book, it makes me feel like that kind of a happiness to hear about that. Is that something you look for?
No, I don't look for, but I often find I like challenging reading. I like interesting phraseology. I really like books about strong women and the South. Oftentimes, there's something, probably my heritage is Alabama, so I do find that interesting, but I don't seek them out necessarily, but I do look for books that have strong feminine characters, whether they're men or women. But you know, so to tell you, I picked another book real quickly, Claire, I promise, that is also written by a very strong woman.
Oh.
So you want to talk about race. For now, if you don't read anything else to help you move forward for racial justice, this one is the book. She's a strong writer, a strong woman with many, many flaws like all of us. But oh my goodness. So no, I don't always pick just the happy ones. I don't know whether it's going to be happy till I read it, but I do love it. Thank you.
Okay, so our next book picture is David Datz, and I am sharing David's cover of his upcoming book, Scalies. I hope I'm saying that right, David.
Yeah, Scalies, that's right.
Good. All right, tell me when I should stop sharing. Should I?
You can stop sharing
cut
now.
Back to you.
Yeah, cut back.
There you go.
So, Scalies is just about out. What's it about? Well, the new humans have escaped, conceived, nurtured, and sequestered, well, actually imprisoned in a secret government laboratory in a remote corner of the Southwest American desert. They have bolted for freedom, leaving behind the luxurious town that was created just for them, where they have everything that they could possibly want except freedom. Their appearance among the general populace creates panic, triggers hysteria, because really, we have enough trouble dealing with our own conflicts and keeping peace among ourselves without dealing with the one small way in which these new humans differ from us, not to mention the practical question of whether or not these new humans are persons with constitutional rights. Now, next door to the project town that the new humans are fleeing from is another project town. It maintains the first project town, and it contains the scientists and the engineers who work on the project, regular people, but not just them. It also includes the people who have to support them in any town, the grocers, the accountants, the mechanics, the teachers, the librarians, all of them with regular jobs, earning multiple times what they could earn from any other employer, because there's a catch, meaning the catch is that they can never leave. Just like the new humans, they're not allowed to leave, because if you're going to maintain secrecy in a project, you can't just let people float in and out at will. But these regular people in this town, they notice that something's going haywire with the project, and most of them really only have a vague idea of what the project is, but something's going wrong, and so they decide to bolt for freedom as well, risking severe repercussions for violating the terms of their employment contracts. Among those people who bolt for freedom, the regular people, is a stressed out lawyer who somehow cannot quell her own fascination with these new humans. And then among the people in the general public who manage to get over their fear and get sucked into this crisis is a jaded actor whose day job consists of speaking at funerals for people who were so loathed and detested in life that no family member or friend or anybody else will stand up and say anything nice about them at their funeral. The future, the survival of these new humans and of the rest of us hangs in the balance in my near future speculative allegory of racism. So the book comes out, well, it's out now. If you want to see it, the easiest way, I will be sending out a mass email. Most of you are on that list, on my list, I believe. But if you go to Amazon.com and search for me by name rather than the title of the book, it's easier. You can find the Kindle version, also the hardbound version. Also on Smashwords.com, the EPUB version is available. The ebooks are $3.99 each. The paperback is $15.99. However, if you can wait a few days, and I'm sure you can, if you can wait a few days, I'm going to be having a sale in which the ebook is absolutely free, and the paperback will be reduced for about 3 weeks, I believe. So that's my book. Thank you.
I want to read that book.
All right. I'm glad. Thank you.
Congratulations, Dave. Good for you, Dave.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I have a question. How do we find out when the book is on sale?
It's on sale now. Oh, you mean, okay.
Yeah.
In my mass email, I'm putting your name down because I don't think I'll have to get your email address later. But in the email, I will detail exactly when the sale starts so you can get the ebook for free.
Thank you.
Very kind, Dave. And can I ask, how are they different?
That's a spoiler.
Oh, okay. Well, you see the title being Scalies. I immediately, of course, go to classic 1984 miniseries V, which was basically one of the first times I ever saw Los Angeles on. Well, that was what fascinated me, I think, with Los Angeles, was the mothership coming across and then the lizard people, you know. But I won't try and get you to reveal spoilers. So
I won't do it anyway.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
I was thinking about going to ask what sci-fi authors or movies have you drawn from in order to write this book?
Oh, well, the book comes out of my own head. I mean, my favorite sci-fi authors are the older ones. I like Ray Bradbury a lot, and some of that vintage. The current crop of sci-fi writers there's my book's very different from what they're doing. So, but yeah, I just the background of the story is not in my brain when I first started thinking about it, was not about sci-fi. It was just that the sci-fi approach lent itself to what I wanted to say.
David, was it fun writing?
Yes, it was. Actually, I finished the first draft of this novel in 2015, and I spent a couple of years trying to push it to conventional publishers, and without success. But I had started this a couple of years earlier, and I was still going to my day job at the time, and I spent 3 years of Saturday mornings working on it, and I managed to finish it just about the time I retired, which was July in 2015. And then there were some revisions, but yes, I had a great time writing it, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Do you dream about these? Do the stories come to you in dreams at all, or how?
You know, this one didn't, but occasionally ideas for stories do come to me in dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do, but this one didn't. To tell you the truth, I don't know where the idea came from. If you asked me how or when I first thought of it, I couldn't tell you.
How do old sci-fi writers and the more current sci-fi writers differ?
Well, I guess if you look at, to contrast the Martian Chronicles, which is very old, the Martian Chronicles are about human beings who happen to be living in a settlement on Mars. And the stories are very human stories about family tensions and that sort of thing. Whereas current sci-fi writers, it appears to me, if you're not, maybe it's easier to talk about the readers. If they're not in an alternative universe by page 2, or if there aren't, you know, a lot of whiz-bang gadgetry, intergalactic travel, space aliens, and interstellar wars, if you're not in the middle of that by page 2, it's not sci-fi. It's not modern sci-fi, really.
Dystopian. Everything's dystopian today, especially on TV. I don't want to.
Yeah, there's a lot of dystopian stuff.
Too depressing. Yeah, but anyway, thank you very much, Dave. That's awesome, and I'm sure there'll be many of us reading.
Dave, did you have your in-house editor help you with this?
She did. Yeah,
oh,
she did.
Okay.
She did line editing for me. Yeah, and she didn't charge me very much either.
Well, that's great.
We're talking about my wife, Marla.
And your
Dave,
daughter.
I had a question. Dave, I had a question too. You referred to it as speculative fiction at one point, and is that difference that you just pointed out, you know, you have to be in another galaxy by page 2, is that sort of the dividing line between speculative fiction and science fiction?
Yeah, kind of.
Really?
Speculative and near future are pretty much the same thing. Speculative means you're taking what's happening now and sort of projecting it into the near future. And it's also, I mean, there's also the categories of hard science fiction and soft science fiction. Hard science fiction is stuff that, based on current knowledge, could actually happen, okay? Whereas soft science fiction is all kind of fantastical stuff that probably couldn't. Okay. Like time travel, for instance. So a lot of people get on my case when I tell them it's not possible.
I think I always thought speculative fiction is sort of a really broader one. It basically means elements that don't exist in the real world, right? So it's kind of
but also that could exist in the real world. You know,
okay.
You could write a story, you know, a very good story, say, about people who were able to make themselves invisible. But it could be fun and
well,
great,
we don't know. As far as we know, it doesn't exist. So.
Exactly, and you're a scientist, so you know that.
Well, I don't know. I like science fiction. I think because I don't have to follow the laws of physics, whereas I always do in my day job. Anyway, and so any other questions? So we should probably move on. Thank you again. And we have Sue Decaney now talking about the Illuminae series.
Yes. This is in the category of science fiction, but this series of books are for anyone who is still young at heart. You'll find them in the young adult section of the library. And only the first book of this series is available at the Altadena Library. I own the other two. So imagine a distant future where humanity is expanded to different systems and communications from one system to another is not instantaneous, but travel is possible through wormholes. Now, if you're way out in one of these systems, how do you survive when your home is invaded by others that are intent on destroying all the inhabitants? So the first book in Illuminae files is called Illuminae, and this cover is gorgeous. I don't have the book myself, so I just printed it out for you. The second one is called Gemina. And I have to show you that these covers are see-through, kind of, and you get all this other like detail on what's in the book. It's just awesome. And the third book is called Obsidio. These were all written by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff working together. And you can tell through the book because most of them have two main characters and a ton of supplementary characters, but they have very distinct voices and how they write things and their phrases, which makes it even more interesting. So the series, the Lumini Files, is not just a rollicking space opera. It uses this really fresh method of presenting the storytelling. The first chapter starts off to frame the stage. A tribunal is investigating heinous crimes, and we, the readers, are seeing the accumulated evidence against the perpetrators. And the evidence is presented in really interesting ways. This is not a book that takes like the third person view and just you read through it. It has different aspects. It's first person, then somebody else might do a summary of surveillance footage. So they're sort of explaining what you would see if you could see that. There's radio transmissions, transcripts, there's journal pages, chat logs between people on computer systems. And each time they switch from one method to another, the fonts are different, the presentation is different. It is a gorgeous book to read, and I suggest that you don't rush reading this book. Take it slow, absorb every word, every image on the page, because it gives you so much more background, like, oh, this is this side of the story, this is that side of the story. The creativity poured into these books is just immersive and so fun. This is the best series I found. Illuminae came out in 2015, and then Gemina was close on its heels in 2016, and then Obsidio came out in 2018. The author's phraseology is also amazing and so on point with the story that you'll find some of their vocabulary like seeping into how you would think of things too. A couple that I really like is saying chill instead of okay, or instead of like I'm good, I'm chill. Another one is instead of saying something like do you understand me, their phrase is you feel me. So I really enjoyed that. And one more amusing aspect of the books is that they redacted swear words in the book. So you get all these like black lines. And I had a lot of time where it's like, what is that one? I'm not quite sure. So in the story, I'll just give you a tiny synopsis of them because these books have so many twists and turns. It's just epic. The first book, Illuminae, starts on a mining colony, which happens to be illegal. And there's, families are there, their miners are there. They have an entire civilization on this planet called Carenza. And it starts off with an invasion. Another company is trying to take over the mining operation because it's very lucrative. And that's how it starts. Some of the people end up escaping from the planet. It turns out that the United Terran Authority, which is kind of the overall police force for the systems, is in the area testing a jump drive. on a special ship, and they heard the SOS. And so they come to the rescue and are able to save a couple people. And on that ship, there is an AI that's supposed to protect the fleet. And in the course of the battle between these vying elements, the AI gets damaged. Okay, so sometimes the AI is going to be able to do good, and sometimes it does things that are just inexplicable to all the humans. So that's the first book. The second book goes over to the place where they're trying to escape to. They have to get out of the system, away from this, right? And let the rest of the world, the systems know that this horrible crime has been committed. And so they're trying to make it to the wormhole. And the corporation that attacked Carenza is now trying to wipe up the mess because they know that they didn't do a good job at the attack, and there are survivors and they need to cover their tracks. So then they start to expand the crimes to take out all possible survivors and anyone who might know anything about this and hush it up. So on the second one, you have two other main characters and a bunch of excellent supporting cast doing interesting things. And as it comes along, the survivors are approaching, and like this kill fleet is coming from the other direction, and crazy stuff happens. One of the twists in Gemina just had me going, no way! You know, I was so shocked. It was outside of any expectation. It was just amazing. So these books are very well written, exciting, and fun. And the last book, the wormhole ends up being destroyed, and now they're all on the other side, on the Carenza side, and they have to go back to Carenza as their only option. So they go back, and they find out there are actually more survivors than they thought there were, and there is a way out for everyone. So it's basically a crime story set in the distant future, and it's the best adventure that I can offer for anybody that is interested in science fiction. So try out the Illuminae files.
Thank you, Sue. We could tell how much you enjoyed that, though. Like, yeah, it really came over. It sounds very exciting. So does anyone else have questions? I have one, but I don't want to always be the one asking. Well, I know one.
Well, I don't want to be the
two of us, yeah.
So I was going to take a break, but go ahead, you ask your question. And I won't ask any questions this time.
No, go ahead. You go first. It's good.
Okay,
It's
well,
good to ask
my question. I was wondering, often an author, when they're writing, has something that inspires them to write that book. There's something in the back of that book. So I'm wondering, you said this is set at a mining colony. I was wondering, do you feel like the setting is in Africa, Wales, or somewhere in the United States because it's united something?
No, not at all. No, it's definitely like an ice planetoid. It has no reference points. The whole book is pretty much post, what would you say, country based. I mean, it's about humans.
But does it relate to anything? I don't know when the book was written, but anything that was happening on Earth?
No, not at all. I mean,
excellent. The author was writing it.
Humans, human greed. You know, love. There's love. There's romance. There's humor. There's fighting. There's
all the good themes. Yeah.
With motivations. Okay.
It's a very human story.
I was going to ask, so one of my favorite books, and I really wanted to pitch one of hers this time, but I'm not going to, so we'll have to do this again so I can. But it's Lois McMaster Bujold, and she's a sci-fi author, and she has a fantastic series called the Volkosican Saga, and it's set on a place that was reached by a wormhole by humans hundreds of years ago, and then that wormhole collapsed, and so then they kind of deteriorated into this sort of imperialistic kind of thing, which is sort of backwards, but then more humans reach them through another series of wormholes that are stable this time and try and invade, and then in the course of fighting them off they kind of become more technologically forward again, but they still keep their sort of backward ways. So it's like Sci-Fi meets Georgette Heyer. It's like Regency Sci-Fi, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm thinking I'm going to check out this wormhole story as well as Dave's, and if you might want to check out Lois McMaster Bujold, because she's it's not the same style of storytelling at all as this, but the Volkosigan saga is fantastic. I think you might really like it.
I'm always looking for other books to read, so
Great.
happy to do that.
Any other questions for Sue? Okay. I muted myself, so thank you very much for presenting. So now we have Sharon Carnegie.
Hi. Okay. I don't see myself, but I'm assuming you guys are seeing me.
We see you.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. So when Claire reached out about this book pitch, I was embedded in the process of getting a book contract. So I thought what I would do instead of pitching somebody else's book this time was just to share with you the absolute and utter joy I felt when I was able to secure a contract after many years of dead-end writing and confusion about structure and form and all of that with Methuen, which is a very big theater publisher. So I'm very pleased that I've gotten there. And what I wanted to tell you is that I signed the contract on July 23rd, so it was really, really soon. It was the chance of being stuck in my house due to COVID that was able to make me sit down and have the time to write the very long and involved proposal for the book. And then it took quite some months for the reviewers to look at it and recommend publication. And so what I wanted to do is to share something of what this book will be, with reference to another book of mine where I really did my first research on this and knew that this one was in the offing. So this is going to be a real life mystery story about a woman whose name is Maria Knebel, was Maria Knebel. She was very short, 4 foot something. Her father had told her that she couldn't nearly be a good actor because she just wasn't pretty enough. But she became a very important actor at the Moscow Art Theater as a character actor. And she almost single-handedly in the Soviet Union kept alive an entire legacy for actors that Stanislavski had invented in the 30s while he was being detained in internal exile by Stalin. So I wanted to share with you that I've written about this a little bit in another book of mine, Stanislavski in Focus. It's out in a couple of different editions. This was the first edition, and I honestly like the cover the best. It came out in a second edition, and if covers, you know, they don't speak to the book, but this one is kind of boring. But it's a better book inside because it's been revised. So this book, Stanislavski in Focus, traces how this Russian director and actor became an internationally known acting teacher, an acting master, and ended up generally known in Hollywood for a technique called the method. But the method is very different from what he actually taught. And this book is setting forth how it's actually different in Russian and in English. Toward the end of his life, however, he got caught in the terror that was launched on the country, on his country, by Stalin. And this is where Maria Knebel starts to come into the story. In the 1930s, as many of you probably know, anyone deemed an enemy of the people in the Soviet Union could be imprisoned and often were executed. And to give you an idea of how horrible this moment was, on December 12, 1938 alone, Stalin signed execution orders for 3,167 people on just that one day. At that time, Stanislavski's work was evolving in new and exciting ways that was quite different from his early work. And later on, Maria Knebel would actually give it a new name called active analysis to distinguish it from what we think of as the method. But these ideas went against Stalinist policies on the art. For example, Stanislavski's use of the spiritual practice of yoga violated state atheism, and his interest in non-realism violated the fact that the only legally approved style of the arts in the 30s in the Soviet Union was socialist realism, and therefore non-realism was verboten. But Stanislavski at this time was simply too famous to disappear, as so many other artists in the Soviet Union did for lesser offenses. So instead, Stalin used a policy that was called isolate and preserve to put Stanislavski under house arrest. So for the last several years of his life, he lived in his home in internal exile, and everything that he did in that home was censored and monitored by Soviet spies in the person of his nurse, his doctors, and even actors that came there to work with him. What Stalin did, however, is allow him to do his work in his home in order to keep him compliant. And then what they would do is on the propaganda side of things, they would only allow people to know about those things that were socially acceptable at that moment. Where did Maria Knebel come into this? She was invited by Stanislavski to come into his home and work with him at this moment in 1935. And at that moment, she realized that active analysis would become her primary mission in life. And when he died, she made it her business to keep what he was doing in that house hidden behind closed doors alive. And she suffered from it. At first, she took trusted actors down into the basements to teach them stuff about yoga and non-realism and all of the things that were being purged from the record. And for this, she was fired from the Moscow Art Theater. Eventually, by the 1950s, she was able to get a job at the Moscow's Central Children's Theater and created a clever way in which she could use fairy tales as non-realist plays to actually practice active analysis under the radar of the Soviet regime. What's really interesting is that the Moscow Central Children's Theater, which is an adult company, became so popular that it was the hardest ticket to get in Moscow, and therefore it was far from just a children's theater because it spoke to all of these other kinds of art. Finally, in the 1960s, under Khrushchev's thaw of the arts, she began to write and to teach openly about active analysis. And by the end of her life in the 1980s, she had written 6 books and had taught all the major directors who revitalized the Russian theater in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and some of her students are still working in the international arena and quite well-known directors.
Sharon, I think we're coming up on 5 minutes.
Okay, so this is my last sentence.
Sorry.
Actually, I have now teach active analysis, and so my new book will be her story, because I think we have heard Stanislavski's name for so long, it's time now to hear hers. Thank you.
And congratulations on the book.
Yes, it'll be fun.
Awesome. And how long have you been wanting to publish a book on her?
For more than 10 years. And I think I have suffered from, what's the word? The problem of success, because my book, Stanislavski in Focus, is very well known, taught many places, in its second edition, and I knew that I didn't want to write that kind of book. And every time I sat down to write this new one, I found myself sort of reiterating the style and the story of the first one. And it's really taken me this long to break into a totally different format for the book. But now, there it is.
Congrats. Any other questions? I think we should probably move on. We're not going to fit everyone in before we finish. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Which is excellent though. It's great. Thank you again, Sharon. The next person is Terry Andrews, and then we have Adrian Breton, and then I will go last in case people have to leave early. I put myself at the end. So Terry, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Thanks for having this great event. I enjoyed it so much last time, and I'm enjoying it just as much this time. And I have to say, it's about the first time I've been on a panel where the readers are almost outnumbered by the authors. So all of you out there that are just about publishing or have recently published, congratulations. That's quite an achievement. I applaud you on that. I like books that both history and, well, I should say nonfiction and fiction. And some of the books I found that have stayed with me the longest are the nonfiction books. And notably, there was The Making of the Atomic Bomb, which I thought was terrific. I thought I knew all about that, realized I knew nothing. Another great book called Let the Sea Make a Noise is a wonderful book about the North Pacific Rim. And the book I'm about to pitch is called, it's in that category. I know that even though I'm reading it now, I haven't finished it, I know that this is going to stay with me the way that those other books did. And it's called The Warmth of Many Suns. And I know a lot of you might know this book because it was a bestseller about 10 years ago by a woman named Isabel Wilkerson. There she is. She's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and she's just a terrific writer. And it's a book about what's called the Great Migration, and I knew of it in passing, but not the details. It lasted from about 1915 to 1917. And it was an era in which Black Americans left the South for the cities of the North. And it was a huge migration, and it was bigger than the California Gold Rush. It was bigger than the Dust Bowl migration from Oklahoma in the 1930s. And like many migrations that are based in social problems and so on, this was like, the Pilgrims coming to America, you name it. All of the injustice that faced Black people in the South were present, and they were trying to escape this, and the story is utterly compelling. It's told over about a 100-year span through the eyes of three participants, and these names are absolutely great: George Swanson Starling, Robert Joseph Pershing Foster, and Ida Mae Brandon Gladney. And the reminiscences, or the remembrances, I should say, of these people are so vivid and they're so poignant, and she sprinkles these liberally throughout the book, the part that I've read so far. But the book is sort of comes down to just a few fundamental questions. I'll read them to you real quickly as part of the narrative of the book. She asks these questions. As these African Americans migrated from the South to the North, almost in an escape mode. They left in the dark of night sometimes, to start their new life. She asked, why did they go? What were they looking for? How did they get the courage to leave all they ever knew for a place they had never seen? The will to be more than the South said they had a right to be. Was it a braver thing to stay, or was it a braver thing to go? what would have happened had all those people raised under Jim Crow not spilled out of the South looking for something better? If they had not gone north, what would Chicago look like? What would New York look like? Philadelphia, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and other cities? Or what would the South, for that matter, look like? Would it be changed on its own? Or did the Black Exodus force the South to face itself in ways that no one could ever have thought possible? And I must admit that I did not pick up this book because of current circumstances with Black Lives Matter and all of the tumult that's going on right now. But it is an amazing book to read in the midst of all that, because it helps set the stage for exactly why there are such fierce feelings among people about this issue. I have to admit, being born and raised in Los Angeles, I really didn't have any experiences that I felt were racist or anything near what the author talks about happened in the South during this era. But I do feel illuminated after having read even part of this book, and it's just an absolute terrific read. She gets into great detail about some of the individual events that happened, the startlingly terrible events that happened. I won't read those, but when you do read them, you know that you've been changed in sort of a fundamental way. So this is a book that I know, not having finished it yet, but I will soon, is going to stay with me for a long time. And I think it's a perfect book to be reading in today's environment.
Thanks, Terry. That was really great. Anyone have any questions for Terry?
I didn't catch the author's name, Terry.
Her name is Isabel Wilkerson.
Wilkerson.
Yeah.
I've heard
there it is there, Joy, if you can see
book,
it.
But I had never known what it was about. So wow, this is always, and as always, we'll put all the books that were pitched, we'll put them all up on our website, and we'll have a video of this on our website so that everyone can have a look, and hopefully a lot of us will want to read lots
Claire,
of these
can
books.
I make one more comment real quick?
Yeah.
And I should have done this at the beginning. I'm so sorry I forgot. I'm doing my job now as a library trustee to let everybody know, and in case I had a little technical glitch, so if you already announced this, my apologies. But we do have a special meeting tomorrow night, the library trustees at 5 o'clock. You can get it on Zoom off of the library webpage. And it's one that we hope a lot of people will participate in, because it has to do with a bond issue that we'd like to discuss and maybe get on the ballot. So those of you that can make it, we would certainly appreciate your comments and your support.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, Terry. I confess I had forgotten to add it to the agenda, and therefore I meant to talk about it at the beginning, and so I forgot, which happened last time as well, as many people will remember. I'm just going to post the actually I guess it's on the front page of the website, isn't it? So it's pretty easy to find the info, but here in chat is a link to all the info about it right there. So you can click on that and find out how to join, and people can still sign up to give a public comment at the beginning as well, can't they, at this point, or they can have it read out. Terry, they can still sign up to have their comment given at the beginning.
Yes, and there's a survey that can be taken too.
Yeah.
That's online. We'd love to get data points for those that haven't taken the survey. We're sort of doing a poll to find out how likely the passage is.
Okay, right. Well, thank you again. That was great on both points. Good book pitch and very important information. And I was going to send out an email about it to the Friends members as well tonight after this meeting. So now we have Adrienne Bratton. Adrienne, I see you. You can.
There.
Unmuted. Okay, you're muted. You're unmuted by host.
There we see. There we hear you. Yeah.
Unmuted, and am I pinned?
Go for it.
See myself here. Do I need to pin my video?
No, you're good. You are. Everyone can see you.
Okay. There. Is that it?
Your
Okay.
video's breaking up a little bit.
Okay. I pitched this book last year. I think it was to Cyber Monday or Friday or whatever, but this isn't the reason this time. I just wanted to let you know, I also had, can you hear?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, because my screen is saying your internet connection is unstable.
It is a
So-
little bit, but we can hear you now.
Okay. I do have another book I'd written first. And this is for the adults, and usually sportscasters like to read it electronically. But I wanted to emphasize the one written for younger people, again, because of current things. And first current thing, Dodger Blue, we're back on the field. The Dodgers from LA, my dad was born in LA, so was I. So that makes it very relevant right now. And I think I made a point last time that sports isn't just for guys. You've got women involved in, you've got mothers, daughters, like myself, sisters, brothers, and then since this was written, women have excelled in all sorts of sports, including baseball and softball. But what I wanted to do was, because of the pandemic and the impending, say, opening or not, or not, and having been an educator, I wanted to point out there are parents who are at home and they're wondering, what can I buy? Who do I get? Just a simple book like this, which I had written, this one I had written in larger print because it was supposed to be for primary grades. However, I'm finding with all the grandparents helping, this print is perfectly adequate for them. But what I wanted to point out was just the fact that I had it done in sepia so that they could experience what was going on at the time. You didn't have HD or color or Technicolor or anything. This is the way things looked, and they weren't quite always adequate. Now, also, if you were a parent reading this to your child, I would say strong third grade and above could read sufficiently self-wise. Because primary is mainly picture books. Okay, you can point out, well, here, I have my father's composition book. I like to point that out because nowadays people don't compose that much anymore, but here you see music. There's homework here, gotten A's, grammar, beautiful penmanship. This is what happened when they went to school at that time. Also, this you may not be able to see, but this is from Jefferson High School, 1933. Look at how the children dressed when they went to school. And you can tell who the teacher is. It fits the stereotype that we used to see in all of these what is it, Archie comic books. So, like you see, the dress is different. Talk about, what if you had to dress like this now? What are trousers? In fact, when I've read the book in classrooms, I bring the cufflinks. And luckily you've got one child who's been to a wedding that knows what a cufflink is because the teacher may not even be wearing a shirt. So again, if you were teaching children at home, you can use so many things for comparison. There's one, can't find the page, but it tells where my grandmother was making $18 a week on any level, especially even high school even. Ratio, what does your dad make? Or what does it say is the average minimum wage per week? Compare that to what was then. What could you buy then? How much money would that be then? Cost of milk now, how much money would that be then? Or going backwards, going forward. If you had this much money, multiply how much you would need to have now. What things are more expensive? What things are less expensive? In fact, what jobs are there? Could you aspire to those jobs now? So these are little things with just this little book that makes somebody think. And like I say, with parents at home now, give them a project. On $18 a week, build your allowance. What would you spend it on? And what could you spend it on? So that's why I think, aside from the Dodgers being on the field, I wanted to speak because oftentimes parents feel that they need to buy the newest supply or the newest gimmick. No, a lot of it's at home. You can look at prices on your grocery list, Instacart either, we don't have that, and have them recreate what it was then. If you had only $18 a week, what would you have? What would you be using? You wouldn't be using the cell phone, that's for sure. But try and get them to see what life was like then.
And Adrian,
And then,
I
that's
was
my
gonna
2
say,
minutes.
no, carry on. I was going to ask you a question. I was going to
Yeah, well,
say,
that was basically it. That $18 a week and the fact that you could use this at home. I taught, and oftentimes you had things at home, especially setting the table to teach you multiplication. So ask your question.
No, I was going to say that this is your book that you wrote about your dad, who was the first.
Oh, well, yes. This is Strike. It's about my father, Emmett Ashford, Los Angeles native, first umpire in organized baseball.
Thank you.
So I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a person making $1 million. It's every sport has an official that keeps the rules of the game. And again, when these children get out, I'm on the children thing because we got such a big problem in September. And I teach children's ballet at Loma Alta Park, and they're slated to open contract classes COVID observant in September. You don't know what's happening from day to day. This thing is dynamic. And I'm trying to figure out, I know they're going to be masked. Do they have to have bring their own little mats or something? So education is on my mind right now. And again, like I'm saying, parents are stressed because they're at home. And as an educator, I think the biggest problem with parents at home is that teachers deal with a group dynamic, whereas parents don't realize they're in a personal dynamic when they're at home with their children.
Yeah.
This is why they may not get the same outcomes that teachers do.
But I posted a link to your book in the chat as well so that people can take a closer look.
Oh, okay. This is the one that I wrote for children. The other one is and it's shorter because, like you say, I used the larger print, and I brought in what am I doing here?
Yeah, perfect.
I'm not used to using the laptop as much. Okay.
You're doing great.
I did have a small dictionary in the children's one because I believe in location skills, internet or whatever. Yeah, so that
Fantastic.
you would have some. Yeah, so that's like you say, I just decided to do this today, or was I able to do this today? So the main thing I wanted to stress, like say, Dodgers are here, some sports are coming back, but, and that women are involved. This is not just a book for the male population.
All right.
And again, these things can be used. Parents are going to be home. My book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Yeah. So for those whose appetite I've whetted, good. And for those who have other interests, well, thank you for your indulgence.
Yeah.
Adrian, I wanted to ask you if your father liked the books.
My father was deceased when I wrote it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he died in the early 1980s, and I wrote this one in 2004 after I had retired from LA Unified School District so I could concentrate. And then I wasn't pleased. I wanted to do more for children.
Okay.
So I geared this to vocabulary and sentence structure to the younger reader.
Okay, very
Great.
good. Thank you.
All right, we are at 3 p.m., but we have one more book pitch by me. So I was not going to pitch my own book, and then because there were so many others I wanted to pitch, but then in the end I could not help myself because I got lots of encouragement from others to do so. So I am going to read from it initially. The name of the book is The Matchmaker. It's book 1 of a trilogy, and it's called The Matchmaker Valentine's Day. And as you can see, that copy had not for resale on the cover because it was my I've got other copies, the proper copies in the States, but in the UK I only have my proof copy. So this is the actual pretty cover without not for resale written all over it. So I will just read an extract. So chapter 1. In my 13 years on the job, I had seen the city of angels at its most depraved, at its lowest. I'd raided meth labs and hooker motels. I'd been at crime scenes that had made me want to lose every meal I'd ever eaten. But what had been done here, it was worse. Everywhere I looked, there was red. It was plastered all over the convenience store, the shelves, the walls, the floors. Red and pink. I fought the urge to turn around and march out the door. Instead, I grabbed a basket and stomped down the nearest aisle in disgust. February 14th, Valentine's Day. What a con job. Just an excuse to raise prices by sticking candy and perfume in a cheap heart-shaped box, or slipping a big "I love you" on the front of some cheap-ass soft toy that'd be in the trash by March, or falling apart at the seams. Probably both. As I passed the display of sappy Valentine's cards, my eye snagged on a particularly gruesome one perched on the top. Because first, the thing was huge, way too big to fit on a mantelpiece or dresser. Nope. That sucker would stand proudly on a coffee table or not at all. Then there was a glitter, right, because nothing says "I love you" like tiny, shiny bits of foil that explode out the envelope and disappear into your carpet and sofa. And what was with a giant teddy bear? What did that even mean? Was it like, "Honey, I can't figure out how to tell you this, but I'm a furry"? I forced myself to walk past the display without stuffing the offending card down the back of it. Moving down the aisle toward the rear of the store, I loaded up my basket with power bars, even though just looking at those slabs of cardboard made my stomach clench, then grabbed a 6-pack of energy drinks from a cooler cabinet. Catching sight of my reflection in the glass, I couldn't help wincing a little. It wasn't like I had high standards. I was sartorially challenged at the best of times. But even for me, I looked bad. My blue eyes were bloodshot with dark bags under them. My light brown hair was now bordering on shaggy since I'd been too busy and too lazy to get it cut for weeks. It also stuck out from my head like a bad wig, thanks to my having slept on and off in the backseat of my car for the last 2 nights. For the same reason, my white cotton shirt was covered in wrinkles, and even in the fuzzy reflection, I could see the residual stain on the front where I spilled ketchup down it in my jeans last night as I scarfed down a fast food burger in between stakeouts. I needed to start wearing darker colors. Sometimes it freaked me out how different I looked from when I'd been in homicide. Not like I'd shown up in designer duds, but at least I'd always stuck gel in my hair when I didn't have time for a shower and pulled on a fresh shirt and clean pants or jeans before heading out. Hell, I'd even ironed my shirts on a weekly basis and got on a suit dry cleaned once in a while. These days, I seem to be going for perpetually rumpled. Maybe that was why Kaylee had started calling me Columbo to my face. What the hell? People didn't like it. They didn't have to look at me. So this is the story of former homicide detective turned private investigator Lyle Thatcher, who has despised romance since his first love affair went bad. So when he's hired to grab some idiot who skipped bail just to get married on Valentine's Day, Lyle isn't exactly sympathetic. That's especially true after crazy old wedding guest Mara Kay Thetcham shoots a stun gun at his chest. At least that's what Lyle thinks happened, until the weird visions and strange compulsions start, and he discovers she did something far worse, turned him into a supernatural matchmaker whose job is to help soulmates stay together. Now Lyle's juggling his commitments to his grouchy father, his orphaned niece, and his struggling PI business with being painfully compelled to help his very first couple, a young rock star and spoiled Beverly Hills princess. And if he wants to find out how to undo this curse he's under, he'll also have to help Mara prove the bail jumper's innocence. Now, the only upside to becoming the unlikeliest Cupid in history is getting back in touch with his old friend and fellow ex-cop Risa Fuentes when he needs her help. But the trouble is, Lyle's already lying to Risa about why he quit the LAPD. So anyway, that is part 1 of The Matchmaker, and I am about to finish part 2, so hopefully it will come out. Will come out soon.
Claire, I have a question.
Yes.
And that is that you're doing something that intrigues me more than anything in writing. And that is you're a woman and you're speaking through a male voice in that first part you read. And I wonder how hard is that to do? Is that pretty difficult?
I think the sad thing, I think the funny thing is you'll often find women writers writing with a male voice and male writers writing with a female voice. And I think maybe there's an element of escapism to it, you know, because this is, you know, a sort of fantasy in a way. It's sort of like got paranormal elements, obviously, because I don't believe matchmakers really exist. So I feel like we're all kind of escaping into, you know, another side of things. And so I think it happens quite a lot that you have women, you know, writing as men, and I always feel slightly guilty, like, oh dear, there's so many men featuring in things. I should really write from a woman's perspective, but no, can't help it. Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, the other thing you did was you wrote an American story. Was there a reason why you did that instead of a British story?
I guess actually this was a TV pilot to begin with. It was a pilot script for a TV show, and it was set in the US, and so I decided I would turn it into a novel. And I have to say I found it a lot easier to write a novel because a novel is so much longer than a script, right? So it's really hard to finish. But when you have a script written, you've kind of got the outline done. And then, but I also found that writing the novel helped me with the character for the script. So, but yeah, that's why it was set in the States. Plus, you know, I have to say, when my dad was ill, I used to read him James Hadley Chase novels, which is very much the kind of, I actually wrote this before that, but it reminded me of this because that's another thing with the hard-bitten, you know, hard-boiled private eye, and it's set in this fictional American city that's somewhere on the West Coast. And it was also written by a British guy who in that case had never ever been to the States and got his whole inspiration from reading other, you know, private eye novels. But yeah, so I'm not the first to do this, and I'm not the last, but I do actually, well, most of the time live in Los Angeles. So at least I could kind of put some, hopefully a bit more realism into it. Okay, so we have now, I believe, come to the end of our event, other than the quiz answers. So I'd like to remind everyone who pitched, please, I forgot to upload the info, but anyway, email us at the friend's address, friend's email address, and the options were Romans or Grocery Outlet or Pizza of Venice or the Friends for a $10 gift card to say thank you very much for pitching. And the other thing I was going to do is show you the quiz answers. So here they are. And again, we'll make these available. Whoops, it's not letting me share it because I panicked then. I thought I just killed Zoom. All right, so can everyone see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this was the first one. Which female author spent the last 8 years of her life living here? And it was Jane Austen, who spent 1899 to 1817 living in this house in Chawton, Hampshire, England with her mother and sister. And she wrote all of her best-known novels while she was living there. And I'm lucky enough I have actually been there, and it's a very fun place to visit. This one, I should actually ask, did anyone guess what this one was?
Mark Twain.
Yes. Well done, people. So yes, Samuel Langhorne Clemens lived there from 1874 to 1891 and wrote many of his most famous novels there as well. Oh, and who got Jane Austen, by the way? I'm sure many people guessed Jane Austen. No? Okay. So which female author of supernatural tales lived here? Any guesses?
Anne Rice?
Yes, very good. New Orleans. She was there you've been there?
Yes, on a garden tour.
I think I've been there too, but by complete accident, so I'm not really sure. Did you get to go inside or just on the way past?
On the way past towards the graveyard.
Ah, right. And apparently it was the inspiration for the first of her Mayfair Witches trilogy, The Witching Hour. And there seems to be a lot of confusion online. She actually owned 2 houses, but didn't live in the second one. And lots of people seem to quote the second one, but the second one I think she uses as a setting for a later book. And so then this one, which mystery writer owned this home? Any guesses?
Agatha Christie?
Yes, very good. It was Agatha Christie. She and her family bought Greenway Estate in Devon, England, near Torquay, as their holiday home in 1938. And if anyone's a fan of the Poirot TV series that's I think shown probably on Playhouse, whatever it's called, theater in the States on PBS with David Suchet, they actually filmed, I believe the last episode there was Dead Man's Folly, and they filmed it at that location where she had actually set it. So that's kind of a nice little bit of info. And then how about this one? Which author designed and had this house built and lived there for 43 years? I'll give you guys a clue. It's also in the UK. It's in England. It was Thomas Hardy, who was actually a trained architect. And I believe he didn't start writing until he was in his 40s, which gave me great comfort when I hadn't written anything for my 40s. And he built, and it's in Dorset, England, and he wrote Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Jude the Obscure, and The Mayor of Casterbridge there. Okay, how about this one? Which literary fairy tale?
The Little Mermaid.
Yes. So written by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen, published in 1837, and it's in Copenhagen, Denmark, which is where he wrote it. How about this one?
Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, I know, it wasn't terribly difficult. So that's actually erected in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it's opposite the birthplace of Arthur Conan Doyle, who was born at number 11 Leith Walk, I guess, in 1859. And apparently there's some controversy because it wasn't a statue of Conan Doyle, it was a statue of Sherlock Holmes, and people felt it shouldn't be the character, but the author who had a statue. How about this one?
Don Quixote.
Sorry, I apparently did not. Well, I think probably that was one of the more obvious ones. But sorry about that for not giving people a chance to guess. Yeah, so Miguel de Cervantes, which I didn't realize published in 2 parts, and the second part was published only a year before his death in Madrid. And it's a Picasso sketch. And how about this one? Which French children's story inspired this?
The Little Prince?
Yes. It's Little Prince on top of his asteroid homeworld, which has 2 active volcanoes, one inactive, one in the little flower. And it's actually in Hakone, Japan, at a whole museum dedicated to the Little Prince. And I always found Antoine de Saint-Exupéry wrote and illustrated it primarily in Long Island, New York, where he moved in late 1940 after fleeing occupied France, and he was hoping to persuade the US to enter the war. And then he later went back into the war as a member of the Free French Air Force, and is believed to have died, and I think that's sort of pretty well known now, when he was flying a reconnaissance flight. He was only supposed to fly 5 flights, and he actually died on his 9th flight. So he sadly died as a war hero. And then final one, what is this statue, and does anyone know where it is?
Central Park, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, written by Charles Ludwig Dodson under the pen name of Lewis Carroll in Oxford, England, published in 1865. And apparently children are invited to crawl all over it, and that's given it its very shiny finish. So that is it.
Wonderful.
That was very, very great.
Yeah.
That was fun. Well done, everybody, and everyone who hung in there listening as well. So a couple of people said they couldn't make it today, and they said, "But can you do it every quarter?" And I'm not sure we can quite do it every quarter, but we can make it a regular thing because it's fun. And I definitely want to pitch Lois McMaster Bujold next time. So, all right. Does anyone have any final words? Anything they want to say that we haven't said?
I want to. Oh, well, go ahead, Dave.
I think you were about to do it, but I just jumped in. I want to thank Claire for putting this together and all the other work she's done. Just amazing.
Yes, Claire.
It's selfish because I love doing. This is so much fun. Thank you all for coming.
My sentiments exactly. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Claire.
Yeah.
You've been a great president.
Thank you, Claire, and thanks to everyone for pitching the books. It was very interesting to listen.
And I saw you on there, Nikki. You've been there the whole time.
I've been lurking and listening the whole time.
Yeah.
We are honored to have
Claire.
you. Very honored.
Oh,
and
no.
as I said, I'm going to send out an email to everybody about the reminder about the public hearing. I'm so glad Terry mentioned it. I'd have felt so terrible. Ooh, can't believe it. Totally
Yep.
forgetful.
Hope to see a lot of you in there. You can still sign up on the website to join the Zoom meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
I wish it didn't start at 1 a.m. my time. But I'm gonna, I don't know, maybe I could stay up super late, but I do want to hear it. But anyway, thank you. So have a great, what's left of the, I guess you guys, I have 45 minutes left of Sunday, but have a great rest of Sunday, everybody. And for everyone who's publishing and writing, keep going.
That's great. Bye.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you, Claire.
Bye.
Bye.